You are listening to the Savage FINcast Retro, Episode 30, Freak Force 17 and 18.
Chicago. A criminal mastermind called Overlord held our city in his terrifying grip. Ordinary cops were losing the battle against Overlord's super freaks and mutants. Then, a miracle happened. When I found him, he had no memory of his past. I helped him find an identity and a life. Now we have a fighting chance. Now we have the dragon.
This is the Savage FINcast Retro, the show hosted by the world's oldest millennial. My name is Jim Purcell.
I'm Craig Olson.
And I'm Augie De Blieck, Jr.,
Hey.
that is.
Hey, Augie.
Guys.
We probably should have had you on earlier than this, but, better late than never. So
Yeah, it's as much my fault. It's okay. I forgive you guys.
As some people out there may or may not know, Augie is a self-professed biggest Freak Force fan on the internet and possibly the planet. So
famous Savage Dragon letter hack too, with maybe Olav Beamer.
Yep.
How many letters do you think you've written into Dragon and the different spin-offs over the years?
I mean, it's definitely in three figures. I mean, it's definitely over 100 and probably 50. I one time had it counted out that I've had 400 letters printed overall total. And, Eric is probably responsible for darn close to half of those. It's probably about 100, 150, somewhere in there.
Amazing.
Yeah. It was a good run.
I think, it's like, I feel like at least it feels like every issue or every other issue, you can find one of your letters in there, at least in the earlier issues.
Yeah. First 100, 150 or so, I guess.
I think your other kind of Savage Dragon fandom claim to fame is having your own character in the Savage Dragon universe with Savage Dragon 115 and the Freak Force story there, which was pretty amazing.
That was quite a fun day at the comic shop because nobody told me about it.
Nobody told you that you were going to be like a main character in this. It's not even like a backup in a way. It's a full length, right? I mean,
Yeah.
It's not the main story, but it's in one of those double-sized issues.
Yeah. So it was a double-sized issue. That story was, I don't think it was a full 20 pages. Maybe been 15. I don't know. Maybe 15 or 20.
It's a lot of pages, though.
Yeah, I have to go back and look. I own a bunch of them now, thankfully.
Yeah, so do I. I actually I have like 4 or 5 pages from that.
Yeah. I met Mark Engler at San Diego Comic-Con that year after that issue had been published, and he made sure to save the pages for me. And
That's awesome.
He made off with a lot of money that day. And the funny story behind that, I don't know if I've ever told this one in public before. Robert Kirkman had emailed me and said he needed pictures of me. And this would probably be the days before I had a digital camera. Right. And I put off doing it. I think he told me he wanted to put me in as a zombie in The Walking Dead at the time. We'll have to double check the timeline if this all works out. And other comic book reviewers and other professionals had been zombified in the early issues of The Walking Dead, if you look carefully enough.
Right.
And I just delayed doing it, and I just forgot, and I never did it. Turns out he was gathering photo reference for Mark for this story.
Englert.
Yeah.
So for the listener, Mark Englert drew the backup in 115, which was the Freak Force backup, and it was kind of the long-awaited return to Freak Force in the Savage world universe, which there were a lot of the characters looked a lot different or behaved a lot different. And then again, I guess for the listeners, for all that might not know, you ran the Pipeline Comics for Comic Book Resources as kind of a comic book analyst. You wrote an article like weekly, right? It was called The Pipeline then.
Yes, I actually started on Usenet back in the day, and about after 100 weeks of that, then Jonah brought me on to write for CBR, where I wrote through 1,000. So I wrote that for 1,000 weeks straight.
and I remember like always kind of tuning in to read your articles. And then I guess CBR, did you leave after CBR was sold, or did you stay on for a little bit after?
I stayed on. CBR sold out to Velnet, or Jonah sold out to Velnet. He secured the bag, as they say. Good for him. He got out while the getting was good, and I think he had enough of the comic book industry too, to a certain degree.
Right.
So I was left behind. I stuck around, and then Velnet decided they were going in a different direction, and I forget how long it was exactly, a year or two later, after CBR sold, they told me they didn't need my services anymore. So.
And then you started your own Patreon/blog and now podcast, and your direction kind of changed from just kind of general American comics to like European Franco-Belgian comics, maybe like what, 10 years ago, maybe less?
It's been 6 since I've had my own website now. So pipelinecomics.com is 6 years old. It's been 26 years since I started writing Pipeline overall, this month, as a matter of fact. In fact, wow. I think today or tomorrow may actually be the exact 26th anniversary. I forget the exact date it would be.
Wow, amazing. Yeah. Good for you, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly weekly anymore, and I've been kind of low content for the past few months for various reasons. But so I discovered the world of Franco-Belgian comics, various comic book conventions in the early 2000s, and it just got to the point where after I left CBR, and I was kind of tired of superheroes to a certain degree. The Franco-Belgian comics were more available thanks to translating them and putting them up digitally. They were super easy to find out. They weren't as difficult as they used to be. So I started reading those a lot, and that became, for the last 5 or 6 years, the focus of most of my comics reading and most of my comics writing as well.
Wow.
Yeah. It keeps me busy. It keeps the life interesting.
Yeah, we gotta imagine too is like just, I don't know if you speak or could read French or Belgian. It must be hard to find a lot of translated stuff besides like the major kind of the major titles.
Yeah, there's a couple of groups that are working on translating things legitimately and honestly. And there's, believe it or not, there's more stuff being printed in English these days than ever before. I mean, a Blaze, which is I think a British publisher. They're publishing some of the recent books that are really good. And, Fantagraphics and Dark Horse and a bunch of the publishers here in North America do too, even if you don't necessarily always realize that they're initially Franco-Belgian comics. I took French back in high school. I've forgotten most of it since then, but I've been doing, Duolingo for the past couple of years and trying to catch up. And I've learned a lot there to the point where I can sort of fake my way through some French comics or some pages of some French comics. So I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to get ahead of that.
I do love European comics a lot. And you're right. There are a lot of them coming out these days, more so than ever before.
Yeah, I just have to point more people to them. They have to listen to me and believe me and try them.
Yeah.
They're great.
Why do you think it hasn't caught on sooner, or why are we so late to the game with French comics in general?
There's probably a few reasons for it. One is just format wise. They're done in a different format. They're done mostly in 48-page or 56-page complete stories in the album format, which is oversized by, North American standards. Publishers don't like publishing bigger books. Yeah. If you shrink them down, they look awful. A lot of times you can barely read the lettering because they were drawn and meant for a larger page size. There are some differences in culture between North American comics and European comics. So there's a lot of big differences. And even in storytelling, there's not as much of a reliance on the 3-act structure necessarily, or happy endings all the time, that kind of thing. So there's a bunch of things working against it. And then just because everything is an album format, it tends to be, quote unquote, and this is something I always argue against, more expensive. Although for my money, I think you get more story per page, per story with even if it's a digital comic, than you do with a North American one. But again, that falls on deaf ears a lot. But I think there's just a number of those institutional things going along, and not enough publishers are willing to go all in on it just yet. But we're getting there. There's more and more every year, so I'm happy about that at least.
Cool. And if listeners want to learn more, they can go to your website too, right? It's pipeline.com.
PipelineComics.com.
Comics. Yes. All
yeah,
right.
that'll get you there. And there's, I think, 300 or 400 reviews in there.
Wow.
If you need any help finding something, just let me know.
That's awesome.
I'll help you anytime.
So, yeah. So, as a comic reviewer, you are prolific, clearly. So when did you start? Like, let's get into Savage Dragon. When did you become a Savage Dragon fan? Like, where did you start?
So I started reading comics in 1989. My first one was Amazing Spider-Man 318. So I started with Todd McFarlane at the end of his run. So I just, Spider-Man was my guy, and I rolled right over into Eric's run, and I really enjoyed it. And so when Image formed, I just followed him, basically. And of all the Image books that started, I thought, Dragon was the best of the group, especially story-wise and actually coming out. Although, there were some delays in the early days there, but the character was getting married and all that. But I just enjoyed the characters, the craziness, Eric's storytelling styles, all that kind of stuff. And I got hooked into it. And it was, for me, especially at that point when I was probably, I guess, about 16 or so when that all happened, it was kind of like, it was my universe. I was on the ground floor of this thing. I started reading Marvel and DC comics, which were at that point already 50 years old or so.
Right.
Image Comics was, this was the start of a new thing. And I was right there at the beginning, and I was reading as many of them as I could afford, which, for the first year was all of them. And then as Extreme and Wildstorm started publishing more and more stuff, I couldn't keep up with everything. But
Of course.
Eric kept things pretty focused. So I stuck with him, and I had started writing letters probably around 1990 or so even. I was fairly quick to that just because I don't know, I've always had this problem with keeping my opinion to myself, if you can tell, after 26 years of writing Pipeline. So I wrote letters. That was my outlet, and they started getting published, and Eric started publishing them. I still think, and I've talked to some editors at companies over the years, and a big advantage for me was that I could write complete and coherent sentences, so they were happy to publish. I can only imagine the crap they were getting back then.
Yeah, especially from younger kids,
Yeah.
It wasn't, it's not, it's like 40-year-olds make up most of the audience now, it's like,
yeah,
the letters are somewhat better, but if you're looking at 1990 when it's a bunch of, 10 to 14-year-olds, they're pretty funny, especially some of the ones Eric was publishing, with the strong opinions and everything.
Yes. We all knew we were right back then too. So. And now it's a great time capsule that I'm sorry we don't have in more comics these days.
Did you ever write to Marvel with Amazing Spider-Man before the guys jumped over to Image?
I may have written those comics, but I never got published in any of them. My first letter was in a Star Trek: The Next Generation comic from DC Comics, yeah. And then I had a few in Marvel Comics Presents. Probably just around the time of Weapon X or just thereafter.
Oh, no kidding! Cool.
Yeah.
Those are great issues to be in.
yeah. Those are good times. I know I think I started reading MCP around issue 50 or so. So when Eric had, that great wraparound cover.
Yeah,
he did all the Excalibur stuff, all that. So I think I had jumped on around that time too. So it all the timing worked out well for Eric Larson fandom.
The infamous Savage Dragon appearance in Marvel Comics Presents.
Yeah, exactly. That Finn. He drew it right. It's okay.
And so I guess digging deeper now, Savage Dragon's out, and now along comes kind of the spin-offs, Vanguard, Super Patriot, and then we get Freak Force. And apparently this comic really captured young Augie's imagination.
Yeah. And I've been thinking about that while I've been listening to this series, listening to you guys talk about this. Why do I like it so much? I've been trying to figure that out. I've been racking my brains, and I think I have a theory on this.
All right. Give it to us.
Sit back. Yeah, here we go. I started reading comics in 1989. I read the last couple of issues of the Giffen DeMatteis, Bwahaha Justice League era books as they came out.
Okay.
I didn't go back and reread. I didn't get those issues until I found them in a back issue bin a few years later. So I had heard about how great they were. I had read the last few issues, which got more serious, but still had that sense of humor that I enjoyed. So I wanted to read more. So Freak Force kind of took that spot for me. It was it was that Justice League flavor for Image Comics, more or less. Maybe not quite so. Well, maybe it was that same flavor. Maybe it was as over the top as that one was. I'm not sure. But Freak Force worked for me on that level, I think. And just the fact that it was in a world of Image Comics, which we can all remember the styles that sort of dominated the day back then.
I do recall, even though I didn't read any of them.
Yes, there were a lot of cross-hatching and slashing of ink lines and stuff. This one, Freak Force, looked a lot different than those.
Yeah.
It almost kind of looked like, to me, some of the sort of the late 80s independent comics boom comics I had read. There were a couple of comic shops during the glut times that were around and selling, back issues of even black and white books and sort of forgotten books, that kind of thing. And the style was different. I mean, obviously, even back then, I knew Vic Bridges liked John Byrne a lot.
Right.
I read Namor. I read John Byrne's Next Men. I read a few other Byrne books. So I knew the styles were the same. But to me, when he compared Freak Force to the rest of Image Comics, Freak Force seemed very different, very much in a different flavor and tone. And I kind of grabbed onto that. I liked that a lot, too. So it was a good-looking book. It was a funny book by the same, plotter who gave us the Justice League books that I wanted to read but didn't have easy access to yet at that point. And, there are characters I liked from the original series, and I do like funny books. I like funny books that have humor.
Right.
I like a good Marx Brothers movie. I like a good funny nowadays European comic. So this kind of merged all those things in together at once, and I think that's probably where I started liking Freak Force so much, or why I started liking it so much.
I do think, it's no secret we've been pretty critical, maybe, of Vic Bridges' art in this.
Yes.
Although I will say,
well, are we critical of his art? Or are we critical of his choices? Because
some of his choices are pretty like the drop shadow panel things, and the costumes that the everyday clothes that the characters are wearing are pretty garish.
I like those. It was just superheroes wearing regular clothes. I mean, half of those clothes have now come back into style. You can get away with wearing a t-shirt tucked into your biker shorts again. Come on.
All my shirts have the Image eye on it.
It's inside jokes. I like it.
The weird pictures on every on every wall. It's just like, what? I mean, we're a little harsh. I will say, it probably stands the test of time better than most of the spin-off Image comics, where there were a million Liefeld and McFarlane clones that weren't even close to Liefeld and McFarlane, but you could tell they were trying. And yes. I would much rather have this Freak Force drawn by somebody that has got more of a Byrne flavor, who I do really enjoy his work still to this day.
Somebody has to.
His stuff's great. I'm sorry. I do. I will not feel bad for liking John Byrne.
He copied the Byrne style before Byrne made every panel on a diagonal angle kind of thing across the page, which, I like the grid better.
And I think that was something with Eric's comics that I really enjoyed, is that he didn't just go after a bunch of guys that were going to ape his style. He went after guys that had more of a classic style or a cleaner style.
That's true. And none of the spin-off books look like Eric.
No.
They're all completely different from each other, as well as from what Eric is doing.
And sometimes from issue to issue, like Vanguard.
Yeah.
That was a fun experiment. Unfortunately, it didn't work out in the long run.
But yeah, I do hear you, Augie, like the humor. I just felt like I think I had a glossier picture of Freak Force before I went back and reread. I hadn't reread it in years before our recent reread for the podcast. Yeah. And some issues just completely fall flat, and some issues are good. I wouldn't call any of the issues for me spectacular. The ones that stand out, maybe the Finkelberry one, the Martian, the Cosmic Cops. And these last few issues with Dr. Verlag are kind of cool. Yeah. And then there's utter flops, like, the one where the the cyber force crossover.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, what, really? I don't know. I mean, how do you feel kind of going back now and looking at it? You still feel the same? Has it lost a little bit of the shine, or you know?
You will never get me to admit to that, sir. I have a character to maintain that I've maintained in the Facebook group for the last year. You've been going through this. But seriously, yeah, I did reread all 18 issues this week in preparation for this appearance.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
And I hate you all for putting thoughts in my mind as I was reading them. Because, yes, there are definitely panels here and there that suffered from perspective issues in some cases, or, you know, overlapping panel choice or breaking out of panel choices and that kind of thing. There are, you know, I'd say isolated issues, but I think any artist who draws 18 continuous issues of a series will have their fair share of, you know, less great ones. And I do think, I mean, one, I think the inker is super important. I think, you know, Carl Kiesel's first issue, I think, might be the best looking issue of the whole run, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah.
Eric's on the last issue, the
Eric's
second
inks,
best looking one. Yeah. Where Eric inked it. We'll get to that later. And then there's a little bit, I think when Chad Hunt first came on, it was a good style, but I think it took him a little while to find it exactly. And the lines were a little too thin, I think, in some places. Maybe we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
I think also there's a case where Vic Bridges may have been running out of steam a little bit near the end. I took a look online and to see, did these issues all come out on time? Because they lasted 18 issues. And in fact, they only ever missed 1 month. I think it was between like issues 14 and 15 or something.
Wow. Which is amazing.
I do these retro reviews based on the publication month. I try to stagger them so they stay in sync with the Savage Dragon issues. And yes, we've basically been 2 on, 2 off, 2 on, 2 off the whole time. This book came out pretty much on time the whole time.
Yeah, there was a couple of times there was maybe 5 or 6 weeks, but then there was a couple of issues that came out, like one came out 3 weeks after the other. So they kept Eric kept things moving here on the series, and Vic Bridges kept going. I was worried when I was looking at the last few issues that maybe they had stuttered to an end. Maybe the last few issues were a couple months apart in each case, but that didn't happen at all. And in fact, I wonder what happened with that missing month, if it was just, you know, Eric missed a solicitation or something by mistake and made up for it afterwards. I don't know. But yeah, I definitely think maybe, you know, Vic was done with comics after this, so maybe he was kind of struggling to get to the end there.
Yeah. I mean, 1995 for almost 18 consecutive Image comics to come out month to month to month is pretty amazing when you think about it. And as much as these were tied in with the main title, it was probably important that they came out, you know, pretty closely together. Mm-hmm. When you start having things like the gang war afterwards, and you start seeing, you know, the characters, and Johnny Redbeard, kind of, you're getting his backstory and stuff in the pages of Freak Force, and then he's kind of just showing up in Savage Dragon. So it was kind of important that you read both to get the full picture.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that was one of the Super Patriot miniseries right after, or I guess it was running concurrently with it.
I think actually there's even an ad in 17 for.
Oh yeah, yep, there it is.
Yeah, so issue 17 is around the same time as the ending of Super Patriot.
Yeah, the first one.
Is it the first one, or was it the?
Oh man, you guys are probably better at this than I am. You've paid more attention to it recently.
Well,
you guys can tell the interaction between the main title and this one better than I probably can at this point too.
Trying to think. There's
Craig, what are you trying to think of?
There was an issue. Was it one of the Freak Force issues had a preview for Super Patriot?
Liberty and Justice.
Liberty and Justice.
I think that was.
16 maybe.
Yeah.
There's an ad in 15. Yes. Yeah. There's a few pages in 16.
Yeah. So that's all going on. And again, there is an ad in 17 which shows, you know, you've got Super Patriot 4 grand finale, you've got Savage Dragon 23, Deadly Duo number 4, which was the second volume, I believe, and Star number 4. So you got a bunch of different things going on in the highbrow universe.
And if I may take a moment just to pat myself on the back on this one, I guessed the correct secret identity of Star before it was revealed, so Eric couldn't publish my letter.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. There's very few plot lines I've been able to guess ahead of time. I'm kind of slow with those things, but I got that one at least.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah. That was a good
Did he
series.
eventually publish it, or it just didn't get published?
I don't think it did, no. I shouldn't say that. I had to go back and take a look.
It's very rare I ever guess correctly on where Eric is going with anything,
Yeah, it's pretty far out there sometimes.
which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It's a testament of his ability to surprise you and write a decent yarn.
By now, you should know all his tricks.
You would think so, but no.
No, not at all.
So why don't we you want to talk a little bit more about some of the, or Augie, you want to kind of do the airing of grievances?
I should have taken better notes. I will let you guys off easy. As for the pictures in the background that change and have weird things on them, that's been done in funny books before. I think Don Rosa and his Uncle Scrooge comics would always throw funny little one panel gag things in the back and references to old stories and stuff on pictures that were hanging in Scrooge's office. So I'm going to say Vic Bridges was homaging that with those choices. The panels with the shadow borders that you hate so much, you know, if that's the biggest artistic choice that an image creator made in 1994, I think we can let him get away with it, considering what some other people were doing at the time. It's fine. You don't like their clothing, you know, it's their bodies and their choices. I kind of like the idea of comic book characters who do have different clothes every day and who do wear normal people clothes. And yes, labels are important in the fashion world, so they're going to put the image eye on everything. God bless America. And what else do I have? I just have all these comics here. I just flip through them all and tell you where you're wrong.
How about Vic's version of our
Artists?
Savage Dragon character?
Savage Dragon looks like a green guy with a fin. What more do you need?
Oh, come on.
He's fine. Everyone walks upright. It's fine. I like artistic interpretations of characters.
And Hortus is
Well, Hortus is a little
head-on
awkward
face.
sometimes. Yeah, there's some
All right, we got
awkward.
it.
I'll give you that one. There's even some awkward barbarics in these last few issues. I'm not sure if it's just awkward or we're seeing him at angles we
the weird
haven't seen him
angles.
before. Yeah, like looking up his nostrils and stuff. It's a little weird, but it's again. I think by the end here, there's a little running out of steam thing going on. I'm not sure.
I
I'm just
feel
gonna
like
go with that.
Barbaric and Vanguard kind of look handsome until you see like the side profile view and you realize they have no nose. And you're like, yeah, that's a little weird.
And Barbaric doesn't have the shoulder pads on, and all of a sudden he looks like a Red Hulk. And you realize when he's nearly naked that he looks like a different character altogether. And we'll get to that in these two issues.
Yeah, yes, being shaved doesn't do him any favors.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's a big difference. He needs the braids in his hair. And so what else? What else is there? There's so much. I mean, I yelled at my car stereo so often for the last year.
And now you're going to go back and re-listen to this and yell at yourself for not coming up with the things you wanted to talk about once you remember them after we're off the air.
Well, no, I'll invite myself back. That's all. You have another Freak Force 3-part miniseries that'll come up eventually.
We do. Yep.
So I'll come back and we'll do that as a 2-parter. And the first part will be me yelling at you guys. I'll listen to all those hours of podcasts again, or I'll go to my Facebook messages to you guys and we'll find out where you were wrong. There's plenty there.
And maybe 15 years from now, we'll touch upon Savage Dragon 115.
Oh, yeah. Please.
Have you on for that.
Definitely.
And then there's also kind of like a Freak Force. Is it an epilogue or just another story that Vic kind of
there was a Chelsea Nirvana story that crops up in issue. Let's see here, because I'm not sure what issue that is, but I remember it vividly because at the time I had no understanding of what the hell was going on.
I remember Eric saying Vic just kind of turned it in. He wasn't even expecting it.
I almost completely forgotten about it. Now I'm going to have to, when you find that issue number, let me know. I'm digging that up next.
I am in the process of using the wiki's magic. Unfortunately, the wiki is slow to load.
Oh, darn you, internet.
We're losing listeners by the second, Jim.
Yeah.
If I haven't scared them away already. Who is that weird voice that's not Raven?
Who is the sense of reason, I hear?
Well, reason is a relative term, really.
All right, let's
I'm here to play the character.
136, which is the one... Yeah, 136, which is the one where dragons fighting Prism on the cover.
Oh, okay. I remember that cover. I'm writing it down. I'm pulling it out.
10-page story. Finding Nirvana.
Yep. And he wrote it too, and he just showed up out of nowhere, I guess. I guess it was just to explain what happened to Chelsea Nirvana in the Savage world.
Awesome. I'm in.
What else? Shoot.
Should we just start with 17?
I guess we can just start talking about these funny books.
Yeah. I mean, 17 has the illegible type on the front cover where it's, purple bleeding into black that you can't read, but who am I to judge?
It is. I think it's one of Vic's best covers, though.
Yes.
It is.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And in some ways, the illegibleness of it enhances it so you can see the art better.
Yeah, you don't even notice at first glance that Freak Force is up there in the top part of the cover because that yellow shirt and the purple outfit pop out so well.
Did Kessel ink every cover? Because I see
he might have.
Kessel's still inking this. I didn't even ever think to check that, but if he's here at the end on both the last issues, I got to assume he was here for any of them, all of them, or any of the ones that Dave Johnson didn't do.
Yeah, he did 12,
16 in front of me, and I think he definitely did 16. Yeah. It's not a credit in front of 15.
Well, it looks like he did. I have the whole pile in front of me here, and it's always Bridges Kessel.
Cool.
Where there are covers that have names signed to them, there's a couple covers that don't have any signatures at all. Although it looks like number 6, where Mighty Man's secret is revealed, it's just Bridges alone. And issue 4 is Bridges alone also. This might be more than the listeners care about, but yes, he was there for a lot of them. Thank goodness.
Did Chad Hunt ink any other issues? Did he do the previous issue? Was he on 16?
He was on 16.
Okay. No, he was. Chad Hunt inked 16.
Yeah, 16 and 15 both, at least.
Okay.
Oh, in fact, on issue 15, there's a correction in the letters column. 14 was inked entirely by Chad Hunt, with the cover inked by Alan Gordon.
Oh, okay.
So there you go.
So he's been the inker for a few issues, and I got to say these last bunch of issues are the best looking the series has been. I would say since the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and then of course in 18 Larson inks it. So
yeah, I wasn't much of a fan of what's his name, Mike Miller.
Mike Miller.
Yeah,
no,
I thought his inks were pretty bad. I'll be completely honest, really, really rough.
Well, here's where I think his inking was really great, because I have to disagree with everything you guys say, of course. It was really great because he sold the pages really cheap on eBay afterwards, and I picked up a whole lot of them, like in the early days of eBay, like 2000, 2002
nice.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
So I was picking up for like $35 a page. They're awesome.
Gosh.
I love them. Yeah. I don't have any from these issues.
Good
just,
Lord.
Just Miller's issues. I think I might have one from issue 1, though. There's a stack behind me somewhere.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was.
I wish I could get any comic page for $35.
That's when I started buying original art in 2000. This is probably 2001 or maybe 2. My first convention, I bought like a Steve Lieber whiteout page for $35.
I remember like Kirby pages being like $300.
Yeah. Oh God, you couldn't buy a panel for that much anymore.
No.
That market's gone completely off the reservation.
I think the art speculators got their mitts on it at some point, and it's just gone to hell ever since.
Yep. All the fun is gone, unfortunately. I'm holding on to, well, I'm not holding. I'm holding on to most of what I have, and I'm happy to have it.
I did grab early Ninja Turtle Savage Dragon appearances from the Frank Fosco ones back in the day, which I couldn't even be able to touch now.
No. Those are good pages, though.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing, though, because it felt like it wasn't on anyone's radar. No one really cared. Probably like these Freak Force pages. I've gone back and looked for Freak Force pages on eBay, like I think during COVID, and they're just nowhere to be found now. No one wants to sell them if they have them.
Yeah.
And if they are on there, they're way too much money for, a page with just talking heads.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder what they even go for these days, because there's not much to comp them out with, or you can't compare them to anything else that's sold recently. So just be whoever's crazy enough to start bidding them up.
Right.
I'll have to take a page and test it out for you later. Put a page on eBay and see what happens.
So we tried to jump in this and we got sidetracked. So let's jump into.
I got to ask you one question.
It's our fault.
This is the first time we've met Dr. Verglag, right?
I think so.
He kind of like
he's behind Freak Factor.
Yeah, Barbaric. Remember, he knocks down the door and he's like surprised, and we don't see who he's surprised at seeing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Oh, you."
But apparently he's got history with him. Apparently he's the cause of their mutations.
No.
He
is. And Augie, feel free to jump in, but he's with the Mutate Manpower Management Service, which obviously is a dig on the mighty Marvel Marching Society.
Yep.
Something. But I guess they run like a kind of a slave camp where they enslave superpower beings, and then there's kind of like a little like inside joke in there with Giffen is that it's kind of like a Suicide Squad, like they collect these guys and basically
brainwash them,
or hand them over to the government or something to that effect. But he's basically enslaving these freaks.
Yeah, it sounds like, from what I read, it sounds like it started out as being sort of a government, it was a prison for bad superpowered people, and then took it one step further and started basically abducting superpowered people to help create his workforce, basically.
Right.
To whatever end he was using them for. So he went a little overboard and started just collecting mutants to abuse.
And Freak Factor was part of that, where they were basically recruiting freaks to be heroes. They would go on a few missions for PR purposes and then get abducted.
Yeah, it was a front to abduct them.
Yeah.
And so at one point, Ricochet, Barbaric, and Jerry the Inhabitor were in this camp, and they were the only ones that survived, like that escaped.
Right.
Except for Jerry got left behind, and so he blames
so he
Barbaric and Ricochet.
So he didn't give them their powers. They were already had powers. They were just abducted by this guy.
They were abducted. Yep.
That's why they have history.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So one thing, though, is kind of weird to me, and it's never explained, and maybe it's a good thing in this day and age that you don't have to explain this, is like when you look at Dr. Verlag's guards, I guess they got the V for Verlag. He's got like a little person there. Is that like a power, or it's just some like what? It's just an odd choice. Like,
I'm not sure I ever noticed they were there.
Yeah.
He's kind of like a puck guy, but he never like has
Yeah. Is he holding like a bowler hat? Is this like a prisoner reference or something with his cane? Fashion choice.
Yeah, that's strange. That's the first I've noticed it, and I don't ever see it ever again, I feel like.
It's in his hand on page 3 again.
He never wears it.
He never wears it, yeah.
Is it some kind of like homage to another villain or something?
It might be.
Know.
I have no idea.
We'll have to ask Giffen someday.
You introduce a hat, you really should give us it was on his head at some point.
Maybe it's a Bond villain thing.
Maybe.
And I really have no idea why his henchmen are wearing like bubbles over their heads.
Well, these
'Cause they
henchmen,
kind of
these seem like the unprogrammed henchmen. These seem to be like his goons.
Yeah, like these are guys you see in front of the computer next issue.
Yeah, these guys don't
Kinda
have
working
chips
at
in
the
their
camp.
These guys don't have chips in their forehead.
they show up next issue without the bubble too, which is kind of weird. But
Well,
I don't
think
know.
that's because I believe Barbaric smashes them in this issue.
yeah,
Oh, that's right. You had the weights, the chain, the ball and chains.
Seems like a bad thing to give a super strong guy a couple of weapons to swing around. I
Yeah.
don't think that was
I
very
guess
well
they
thought out.
thought it would keep his arms down or something.
But we do
Poor
see a bunch of characters that we've seen previously in the series, so we get a lot of callbacks to the series, through its entire run, like Rushmore, the one with hair, wild hair, I guess her name is.
Yeah.
And Major Disaster, of course. So
Yeah. And I will say, like, I do feel like these last two issues, there's a lot of good character development and a lot of cool stuff happening. So it's kind of funny to be like kind of dumping on this comic and getting Augie all worked up. And then like he's on the program now. And it's like the two issues I feel like are some of the better issues of the run. And I don't have that much to say. I'm not being a coward in front of you, Augie. I actually do like these issues.
I really just came here so I could listen to you guys eat your words for an hour.
Well, that's the thing.
I bided my time.
I mean, that's the thing. I also really like these last two issues because it feels like a proper culmination of events. Characters are having arcs and they are having things that matter to them, and everything's kind of coming together. The plot threads that have been seeded throughout the series are being resolved, and it's just unfortunate that this didn't happen in like issue 10.
Yeah. Although I'll say it doesn't feel rushed either. Some of these things.
It isn't.
I think it is a little bit crammed. I think there are 3 storylines being smushed together to an ending, but I think they do it well. Not every comic can do that, where they need to resolve these things, and in doing so, it often feels rushed. Where here, it doesn't. You can sort of see the smushing, but it doesn't feel rushed, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, and it's a classic case of if this were a comic book today, most of these issues would be 6-issue storylines. Maybe not for Eric, because he's good about moving through things, but there's a lot of stuff going on, like the Invasion of New York storyline would have been a lot longer. I think this storyline with the camp would have been more than 2 issues. You could have filled out a lot more fighting and ramped it up even more.
Well, I think the Battle for New York should have been a little longer. I think the fact that it got truncated the way it did was kind of unsatisfying as far as that arc went. I think it started great, but I think it ended poorly.
Yeah, in retrospect, that one, when I was reading it recently, it just felt weird. It felt out of place, like they were moving in different directions and just kind of stopped. Like, okay, so here we go, airing of grievances again. I don't mind so much the ending that, Hardest trips over something and breaks it, and that's how they win the day. Yeah. Because it's Hardest. It's kind of part of her personality is she's this naive bumpkin who doesn't know what she's doing, and she trips over things, and it kind of makes sense. If anyone else had done it, it might have seemed a little weird and ham-fisted, but with her doing it, it's also funnier because it so goes against what your typical comic book storyline would be. Right. I would have to build up to this insane fight, and how someone would have to have this heroic moment and give their lives to save the day. Instead, Hardest, kills the woman on her back and then, pulls the thing out by mistake and everyone goes away. Part of that is the humor to me, but yeah, I think that storyline I can agree with you on was a little bit, it felt weird while I was reading it. Like, where's it going? I wasn't quite sure, and not in a good way. It was just paced weirdly, I think.
It's just the opening is so good.
Yeah. Yes.
See, one of my big complaints about this series the whole time is that it hasn't felt very Giffen to me, from my familiarity with Giffen as a writer. But that felt Giffen to me, where because Giffen can kind of balance the humor and the drama, and the fucked up situations in a way in a lot of other books that he does. Whereas in Freak Force, it's a lot more humor and not a lot of the other. So when the Cosmic Cops show up and just start smushing everybody, and you get all the descriptions of who's dying, that felt like I can't be 100% sure if it was Giffen or Eric, because I think Eric does all the dialogue stuff. But whoever was in charge of that, it was a brilliant moment, that opening.
Throughout the whole series, there's just a lot of like, making fun of comic book tropes, or just kind of wink things like, I don't know, Fantastical Force, or the throwaways, which were like all like kind of spoofs on, the fifth Fantastic Four members, or the temporary Fantastic Four members. You got this the MMMS thing going on. I don't know. I just little things here and there are kind of funny. Sometimes it pulls me out of it, but I kind of get a chuckle and I can appreciate it. You think that's more Eric's end of things? Because Eric is known to kind of circle that well a lot.
I mean, Eric is funny. He does a lot of humor stuff. It's hard to say.
I wasn't a big DC fan, so I didn't read as much Giffen as you guys probably have. So I'm not, coming into this knowing if there's little winks and nods to like past Giffen stories, or if that's his style, or
the thing with Giffen, especially with the Justice League stuff, was that he would create these plots and just hand the pages over to JM DeMatteis, however you pronounce it, and JM would come up with a script based on that without any idea what was actually going on. So he would contribute a lot of the jokes, a lot of the gags, the punchlines to the overall plot that Giffen had written. So there's a unique chemistry that works so well for that series that's, pretty much gone unmatched in comics world since then. But I think Giffen is very much a plot guy, but he also does plot with the characters in mind. And I think the strongest parts of the series, even, and I wrote a note down when I was reading this stuff earlier this week, issue 7, which Killcat was in that issue, was I think one of the strongest ones, just because the characters were so well defined that like every line they spoke was in their character. It was, Dart getting frustrated and being the hard-nosed leader and all the other kinds of things. Watch the way the characters act in that, and you'll see they're not reacting to the plot. They're reacting in character to what's going on with them. Right. And I think that may be sometimes where Freak Force, I don't want to say goes off the tracks, because that would be negative, and I'm never negative about this book. So where it gets lost a little bit, perhaps, is where we're getting more into the plot and trying to get through the plot rather than seeing the characters reacting to the plot and acting accordingly.
Yeah.
And I think,
I can see that.
Some of that happens in these last couple issues, but there's also, this is a special occasion where we have to, tie up all the strings and get all the plot lines done so we can get out of here with a complete story in the end. So I don't mind that so much.
One of the things that, like, looking at these characters, and again, maybe not knowing the complete picture, is there supposed to be some kind of resemblance between Chelsea Nirvana and, like, I always got these like Megan vibes from Excalibur. Like,
I can see that. She's got a very similar costume.
It's a weird design, and I don't know.
And the hair, and the
hair,
lack of nose.
I don't know.
The green bodysuit and the big hair. Yeah, that's enough.
The very high forehead.
Yeah, as she becomes more and more manly.
Yeah, that whole thing
which
she's
I
turning
didn't really
into a dude.
catch on.
Yeah, that whole thing with her turning into a dude was kind of odd.
Yeah, and it's one of those things you don't notice until you look after someone actually says it out loud in the comic, and that might have been in issue 18 where they first said it.
It's in issue 18.
You can see it. Yeah,
and to be honest, you only really see it in 18, because after he mentions that, she becomes completely flat-chested.
Yeah,
which is the opposite of 17.
Right, exactly.
Right.
I mean, the stinger on 17, she is still very much a woman.
Oh yeah, with a lot of hair at the end of 17. Holy cow!
Yeah,
and a lot of forehead.
Well, big hair was in back then. So even Dart. Holy cow! It's just pouring out of her top of her head there. It's crazy. But Hardest looks great in the last page of 17. They get that little like side angle of her eye and her mouth. It's great. It's probably your favorite drawing of Hardest in the entire series.
The last page?
Yeah, it's just her eye in the corner, really. Her eye and nose.
We had a pinup in this issue, which was, I believe, the cover to the Art of Eric Larson book that never came out.
Yep, absolutely.
That's why it's familiar to me. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there was an ad for it in one of the very earliest issues of Freak Force, or maybe it was in Dragon still, but yeah, that book sadly never came out. I was looking forward to it.
I think a lot of people think it's a tiny dragon, but it's supposed to be a tattoo.
Yeah. Yep.
But it doesn't follow the curvature of her chest. So
yeah, that's the problem. They didn't have Photoshop warp back then yet.
No.
It's a lot of real estate there for a tattoo. I'm going to hell.
You do realize we usually have Raven on this podcast, so there's nothing that you're going to say that's going to make anyone blush here.
Good point.
I do like the way Vic draws Dart when she's in the basement. She's like all disheveled. Her hair is all messed up.
Yeah.
She's been attached to that wall for like weeks now.
Yeah.
It feels like forever. You must really hate that dress that Rapture's wearing then. the pink, whatever folded kind of thing that.
Oh,
she has her leg in a cast. It's easier to wear a dress at that point.
Yeah, I mean that's a maximum frump for.
It's like the most conservative dress for Rapture. It seems ridiculous, but okay.
I was gonna say it is Vic Bridges, but then he also draws Chelsea Nirvana this issue in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So
it's just Rapture looks like a 5th grade school teacher for some reason.
That's a good description. I still can't get over Chelsea Nirvana's hair. It's got those Liefeld-like lines too going from it. Those little wisps of hair in the middle of the body of the hair.
Yeah, it's true.
It looks like Boom Boom from New Mutants 82 or
yeah.
whatever his first issue was.
Do we ever find out who this gray guy is? Is he just kind of a no-name character?
He's a controlled, like, the V stands for what's his face, and I think he's just one of his program goons. I don't think anyone we've ever met.
One panel that as I'm looking at this gray guy, I'm noticing this other panel, and I forgot I was going to bring this up. The panel where Super Patriot is just blasting the goons, and they just turn to skeletons. It's kind of a funny panel. Yeah. It's just like totally makes them skeletons.
That's and I did notice a lot of times Vic Bridges was really good at drawing. That's right, I'm saying really good at drawing, which you guys probably hated. The way he draws Super Patriot changing his arm guns around, kind of like waving his arm and forming it into a different shape of a gun. Drawing the arm multiple times to show that in a single panel, which I'm sure probably confused you guys because you're not good comic readers earlier in the series. But he didn't do that here so much. I guess he'd gotten tired of drawing it.
I do appreciate this style of gun with like the Kirby dots and stuff in there because kind of makes more sense than like, as cool as like the Dave Johnson guns look where they're shooting bullets out. It doesn't quite make sense.
Yeah.
And of course, yes.
Where are the bullets coming from?
Yeah, and does he collect all the shells back up later on? And
it's comic books.
Exactly, but I'm just saying, like,
see, every morning he eats a big old bowl of bullets to reload.
The kind of like this giant like kind of blast furnace gun kind of makes a little more sense.
God, he's a great artist. Really, it's amazing. I was going to throw it. Oh, I also like, speaking of which, while Super Patriot is blasting away there, the Chris Eliopoulos' lettering, we got to mention it here, the Braka, and all the classic, comic styling lettering with the bullets and everything. I love that stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't until we really did this podcast that I got, I did really notice it and liked it, but more and more like reviewing issues every month and looking at lettering, how much, lettering is part of a comic and how much it changes the look of a comic. And when you have a great letterer, he can really make it look great.
Yeah. And there were a couple times when I was reading the series as a whole where it seemed like the lettering changed sizes or something. I had to go back to all the issues and compare them, but there are a couple issues. Yeah, in fact, here it is. I'm looking at now. Issue Look at issue 4, the lettering just looks larger. So I'm not sure if, he had took the Ames guide out and drew off the different line, or if the art was a different size or something, but it
That's
definitely
strange.
shrunk back down for these last couple issues.
Especially in, I'm assuming he's lettering right on the page. You have original art, so you would know. But
yeah, it's all right on the page. It's not even pasted in. It's directly on there.
Yeah.
Those were a lot of overnight FedEx bills between California and New Jersey back in the day.
It is crazy to think about that.
It is. How many packages get lost anyway every year?
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
I couldn't imagine like being an artist and losing like even one page and just being like, I gotta draw that over again.
Yeah.
Serious?
It's back in the day when not only did you have to ship the art around, but if you wanted to call your collaborator on the other coast, it was cheaper after 8:00 at night.
Yeah.
Long distance calls were expensive, and it was a business expense, but still.
And never mind just the cost of shipping everything.
Yeah.
And you probably would want to get it like, with insurance and everything else.
Oh, for sure. And that's where they make their money, is the express shipments. That's where the big profit margins all are. And I'm not saying that because I happen to work for one of those shipping companies. So I know these things.
Insurance doesn't get you your art back, though.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I guess just like the signature and ensuring that someone signs for it. And
Yeah, hopefully people made photocopies before they sent them.
that's true, too.
But I imagine a lot
sure
of
they
people
did.
didn't. And I'm sure people forgot to, or just didn't bother in the rush of the day. And
Yeah.
that could end badly.
Yeah. So got sidetracked a little. Sorry about that, but
I'm only here once every 5 or 6 years, so it's my fault. I apologize.
I do want to say the one thing I do appreciate about Freak Force too is the cast of villains. Like over these 18 issues, we've had some reoccurring villains, and they seem like they all reoccur in these last 2 issues.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a lot of different designs, and I'm not sure how many just Vic came up with and how many Eric just doodled and told Vic to just copy. But there's a lot. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of like throwaway guys that you only see for a couple of panels. But then there's a lot of guys that we're seeing that Freak Force battled previously.
Yeah.
So
especially in issue 18, where they're in the camp there and they're fighting everybody. And to be honest, I couldn't keep track of it for those couple of pages. Like, I don't know who's on which side at this point. Which group came with them to help free the campers, and which ones are the camp folk who are fighting back. I kind of too many characters.
The way you could tell is because they all have like the Verlag costumes on, like the V on it. So the ones fighting for Dr. Verlag are forced to wear their their uniforms.
What is that purple guy floating in air with the big fists and no body? It's weird. There's a lot of weirdness going on in these pages.
He is one of Dr. Nirvana's henchmen that got changed.
Okay.
So once Chelsea Nirvana got Johnny Redbeard's power, one of the first thing was she rounded up his henchmen, her father's henchmen, and gave them powers. I don't know why he's like a purple guy, if he's supposed to be making fun of somebody.
Probably.
I don't think Bloop was around then.
No, not yet.
Or I don't know, Slimer or something. It's the closest thing I could think of. But
so what you're saying here is I probably should have read some Dragon issues alongside this to freshen up.
Well, it is kind of funny. We get 2 characters that are floating without legs. You got that Hubert guy.
Yeah. The Hubert guy.
And
like a ball.
Yeah, Hubert's a play on what's the Fantastic Four robot?
Oh, Herbie.
Yeah, he's part of the throwaways, so he's one of the Fantastic Four characters that were throwaways.
Right. Right, because that was all the extra characters that joined the team at various points in their history. Because I think there was a Luke Cage, and there was a
Newgrage, Hubert, Wildhair, and Rock Woman, who is was it Miss Marvel that turned into the Thing?
Yes, she was She-Thing.
Yeah.
She-Thing.
And then you had Fantastical Force, which was Stretcho, Human Sparkler, Rushmore, which was like the four-headed rock guy, Transparent Trish.
So, yeah, we've run out of names. We're going for alternatives now.
So, all right, I guess we're in 18. I like the cover for 18. You know,
oh, it's great.
The
of,
ricochet in front of the logo is awesome.
Yeah, and you got the, you know, Freak Force. You know, if you're looking at this cover, you're like, why the hell are they leading all these villains behind them?
Yeah. Rapture's neck might be missing a little bit, but it looks great. I'm just gonna beat you guys to saying that because
Barbaric might have shrunk down in size a little bit, but you know, we got to share the spotlight with the rest of the characters.
There's a bunch of characters in the back we can't see underneath the logo. That stinks. I want the poster version of this one. So this is the Eric Larson inked issue, and I don't believe him when he says he just couldn't get over looking at Vic Bridges' artwork and had to take his chance here to ink it. Part of me wonders, was the book just not making any money at all, so he couldn't afford an inker? Was the book running late? Was Chad Hunt not available?
Well,
or did he really just want to ink it himself? I'm not sure.
It's funny this happened, if only because this is the first time of two that a spinoff that he's been doing that he wound up drawing himself for the last issue. Yeah, that happened on Supreme as well.
That's right. Yeah.
If you look at the credits in the front, it says Eric Larson inks by swell-headed Big Shot, hoping to get some attention in a feeble display of last-minute effort.
So close. Well, this truly made him a better artist in my mind, being able to work over the great artwork of Vic Bridges.
You know, though, I don't feel like it's too overpowering.
No, it's not. I mean, it's definitely Eric. You can definitely see his work on top, but you can still see most of Vic Bridges underneath. So I think the combination is great.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen some of his inks where it's pretty heavy-handed, and it almost looks just like Eric drew it. Like I'm thinking of like
I'll say this. All right,
the Destroyer Duck crossover.
Yeah.
That, you know, I don't know what the artists look like prior to Eric's inks, but when I first bought that almost fooled me that I thought Eric just drew it.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this. This looks the most John Byrne with Eric inking it.
Yeah, he may have been thinking of Byrne as he inked it, really. Wouldn't be surprised.
Because if you look on the first page, the one dude who kind of looks like Superman.
Yeah.
It seems like a very Byrne-sian Superman.
Yeah. And I've definitely seen John Byrne influences in Eric's artwork in the past.
For sure. I'm sure there's,
I mean, just for the amount of influence Byrne probably had in a lot of Eric's, you know, beginning, you know, late 70s, early 80s when Eric was still, you know, somewhat of an amateur.
Mm-hmm.
John Byrne was all over the place. I mean, his
sure.
X-Men were...
Well, his X-Men were big, but he didn't get. Did he become all over the place more when he moved to DC and did all the Superman stuff?
Well, when he had Alpha Flight, X-Men.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. I always forget about his Alpha Flight and his Fantastic
Four. That was a massive success.
Okay, you're right. He does have a lot of Marvel work before he went to DC.
And he did the Iron Fist series he did with Claremont before X-Men.
Yes,
I think it was.
You're right. Yep, absolutely.
So he was all over the place.
And he did Avengers, a bunch of Avengers issues.
Yeah, and the Captain America got cut short.
It seemed like they wanted to boost in sales. They kind of pulled him in, and he was like the hot thing.
Yep. And he did the Hulk before Peter David came on, right? If I remember correctly.
It wasn't Simonson?
Is that true?
Or was it? I thought it was Simonson for a little bit. No.
We're gonna have to look
maybe
that
Simonson just did the covers.
Yeah.
I
wasn't that big into Hulk before Peter David, honestly.
So. I mean, he did that She-Hulk run, so it makes sense that he would have a Hulk run.
Oh,
yeah, he did the She-Hulk, and then Eric was already big when he kind of moved on to like Namor and.
Right.
There is a Marvel Visionaries John Byrne, the Incredible Hulk in the 80s. I don't know the issue numbers yet, but
it looks like he did 7 issues of Incredible Hulk in 85.
Okay.
Oh,
that's right. That ended in a Jim Shooter dispute. Oh boy. Yes, that may have been even a little bit longer before Peter David started.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was a solo writer artist on that Hulk run, that short Hulk run.
Yep.
86. This must be. You said there was a dispute, so this is what probably drove him to DC. Because in
I'm sure it's part of it.
In 86, he would have been doing his Man of Steel coming out of
Man of
Crisis.
Steel, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Good point. So Peter Davids took over Hulk in 1987.
Oh,
so
wow.
not too long.
I didn't
after.
realize it was that early.
Yeah. Yeah. This is crazy. So 319. I'm trying to figure out the exact issue number.
There was an Al Milgrom run between it and Peter David, I think.
Okay.
Al Milgram's always got to come in to save the day.
Was Al Milgrom doing a lot of the Grey Hulk stuff, or did Peter David start the Grey Hulk stuff, or was that
based on what I'm looking at? I see Grey Hulk on covers that Al Milgrom wrote and drew. Yeah. I'm not much of a Hulk expert, so I can't say. There's a Grey Hulk here with Peter David's name on it. I want to say, based on what I'm looking at, Al Milgrom may have started the Grey Hulk stuff, possibly.
And thank you for listening to the Hulk with a Fin podcast.
There's a green character, one way or the other.
I forgot where we're going with this, but the John Byrne influence and all this in the inks.
It's definitely there. You are correct.
What's the deal with like
what's up with Hitler?
Like, yeah, it's
Hitler's
so like
why is Hitler here?
Don't quote me on that.
What did you say? I'm sorry,
I said Hitler is the greatest, but don't quote me on
Jesus.
that.
I'm sorry. You did not have to repeat that.
I think these guys might be fascist guys.
Yeah, it's so on the nose. Like, man, make him a skinhead or something, but like a Hitler guy.
They're gonna make
it's so weird.
They're gonna make the freaks pick cotton.
Yeah, and he repeats that line a couple pages later. It's great storytelling.
Yeah, I don't know who chose that, but that's man.
It's rough.
There's subtlety, I guess, is for weaklings.
You're talking about Eric Larson here. The man did a mouse parody, for goodness sake. Those don't go over well anymore.
And he called it the best thing he ever did.
Yes, he did. Just recently. That's trouble.
Yes.
Hey, can we talk about the best part of this issue, probably right off the top? Can we just open to the center fold, the center spread, the poster?
Sure.
This month.
The Chrissy.
The Chris Eliopoulos poster. Come on.
Yeah.
How great is that thing?
I got to tell you, man, it's amazing, like, where Chris is at now and, like, how popular his books have become. And he's got the cartoon show. And
he started off drawing hardest, better than Vic Bridges. I didn't say that.
Oh, jeez.
It's
very cool. It's cool to see him cartoony like this.
Yeah, I love it.
It's also kind of funny because it doesn't look anything like what his style looks like now.
Yeah, no, it's definitely morphed over the years.
Yeah, I mean, this is closer to what he does now than what he did on like Desperate Times. I would say,
sure, yeah,
a bit more Watterson influence in that. Whereas this has kind of the dot eye thing going on that he would continue to do into his Ordinary People Change the World books.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting to see this early cartooning style and where he's at now with TV shows and what have you.
Yep. It all started with Savage Dragon. Oh, speaking of multimedia properties, I don't know which issue it was way back when. There was a reference to the animated Savage Dragon cartoon being worked on at the time.
Yeah.
And someone had asked about Freak Force being in that. And his response was that Freak Force had been separately licensed to Universal.
Wow.
Yeah, or someone, or not licensed, but, optioned by Universal. So that didn't work out either, unfortunately. Could you imagine a world with that?
Only Barbaric shows up in the cartoon, right?
Yeah,
I think so.
In the Savage Dragon cartoon, it's weird because no Super Patriot. I don't think anybody from Freak Force is in there besides Barbaric. I wonder why Barbaric was allowed.
I don't know.
Was that in season 2?
I don't know.
Maybe the option had lapsed by then?
Maybe. I don't actually.
I think he's in.
I think it was season 1.
Because I think he's in like the intro.
Oh, okay.
With She-Hulk.
Yeah, I haven't been able to put myself through rewatching that series.
Oh yeah, I do think I
masterpiece.
think She Dragon is in the cartoon, so she's
She
another
definitely is,
character.
yeah.
Is definitely is.
Okay.
Yeah. It would have been cool to see an animated like Super Patriot. Maybe not in that cartoon, but
You have to get someone in Japan to animate that one. That needs to be an anime kind of thing on Netflix.
yeah. I was hoping that Savage Dragon was going to appear in season 2 of Invincible, but it sounds like that will not be the case.
No. Which is funny, too, because I kept having flashbacks to Invincible every time the government guy shows up in Freak Force. I'm like, is he outside the same building? Is he working the same building as they always had the government guys in Invincible?
Parking in rear.
Yeah, exactly. It just always reminded me of the same building.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's probably just coincidence, or they're all both modeling it off of the same CIA building or something. I don't know.
I gotta say, it was moderately annoying that both the Jake the Agent, what's his name, the Inhabitor, and
Jerry.
Dr. What's His Face all have similar hairlines.
They do look a lot alike.
Hey, middle-aged, you know?
Yeah. Would you rather be the Avengers with a bunch of blonde-haired, blue-eyed guys? Eric Larson's watching out for the brunettes in this world. The brown-haired folks like us. Me, at least. I used to have hair.
I'm growing mine out.
You
Lucky
hippie.
you.
So yeah,
What else is going on here?
this final issue, I guess, is just it's all the plot lines coming together to turn into a big fight scene. We get Dart basically being the leader, leading all the characters in. It's just a takedown of this organization, and everyone backstabbing each other at the end.
You know, it's funny how Ricochet just decides she doesn't want to wear a uniform anymore. She just says,
I'm not going to lie. This is actually my favorite Ricochet outfit now.
It's kind of cool.
It's really cool.
It works. But that's what
Never to
happens
be
when you
seen
have
again.
multiple costumes. You have multiple ones that are great.
The sunglasses really bring it together.
Yeah. At night. While attacking a remote camp with only the moonlight above. Yeah, okay.
You got to protect. It's eye protection.
Yeah.
Yeah, from all the bouncing
around. Yeah.
And she's got the leather jacket because, again, it's 1995 or so.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we get all the fight of the freaks with the bag man. I don't know what Bagman would do other than suffocate you.
That's about all I could imagine. Oh, and then you have the best part, again, going back to the sense of humor of the book, of course, being the Mighty Man subplot.
Oh, right.
Oh, right. Yeah.
She accidentally ends up transforming back. Then she, goes back to, was it Phyllis?
Yep.
And can't explain it fast enough and flies away too late.
It's a nice little plot device to keep like the strongest superhero kind of out of the picture.
Yeah, pretty much. Probably the whole point of it all along. And then wrapping up in the end with the coming full circle to the first couple pages of Freak Force 1, kind of meet up with everyone at her door again at the end of issue 18 here.
Yeah, because they burned the office down.
She burned the office down.
Yeah, by leaving the stove on. Brilliant.
They rushed out so fast, they burned the place down. It's brilliant.
It's like every single person in Freak Force, besides like Dart and Super Patriot, is incompetent.
Yeah. Yes. The look on Super Patriot's face when he's like, I'm open for any ideas at this point, going back to camp after the fire.
Super Patriot is such a funny character because, Eric could have just easily made him like a Captain America, doppelganger kind of guy, just, an all-American guy. Yes, he's a cyborg, but he's like, a selfless, all American. But the way he's written, he's just a grumpy dude. Like, the issue before this, he kind of wants to just quit because he's just had it. You could never imagine like Steve Rogers having that attitude. It would be so weird. And that's, I think, the genius of the character. Like he's, if you just saw him, you would think he was supposed to be that patriotic kind of dude and just fall into those tropes, but he's definitely not.
No.
You know, speaking of, we actually kind of forgot a key plot point in all of this in the last issue. Apparently, Chelsea was like putting post-hypnotic suggestions on the computers. And,
yes.
And that's why they've all been acting like assholes.
They explain the entire series on a page we forgot to talk about.
Yeah.
She's using the computer, which doesn't have any games on it. This artist wanted to play games in a previous issue. And
Super Patriot, Horridus, and Dart were unaffected because none of them use computers.
I don't know.
I guess.
I think that's the implication.
That
and then
works.
was it just left on when Mighty Man was in there and she just became adult or something? Just burned the whole place down.
I don't know.
See, now we have to reread the entire series again and see who's using the computer and when. And how do they act right afterwards? Or what was the computer? It wasn't just a computer, though. Wasn't it like sounds or noise or something in the building? It was controlling.
Yeah, her father's an evil genius, so it's some kind of device that's what I chalk it up to.
Yeah, so
the
subliminal disrupt, yeah.
Yeah, it says subliminal disrupt wave pattern, rolling wave pattern active, undermine confidence. So whatever this thing is doing is supposed to undermine the confidence of everyone on the team.
Maybe that makes sense of why Super Patriot was acting that way.
Yeah.
And sow discord. And that's right. The panel before Rapture's drinking out of a highbrow mug.
It's funny because I don't necessarily know that or think that that's needed, because I just felt like their confidence would be undermined anyway. I don't find it odd. If that panel was never there, I'd never be like, why are they acting this way? It just seems like, I don't know.
Yeah.
They should feel that way. Like,
maybe it helps explain. I mean, because there was an ongoing plot line throughout the whole thing about how they just can't act right as a team, how they're all strong in their own ways, but they can never put it together to defeat anyone, even as they defeat everyone anyway.
It's always by accident.
Yeah, it's usually by accident. They luck into something, or they have to get Joey out. Something desperate has to happen. With all those fights, I kept looking for, I was trained in reading enough Spider-Man comics to know if Spider-Man's in a movie theater fighting someone, he can spill the butter over the floor to help push the guy away and have him slide across the floor, or shock himself with the melted butter, stuff like. I kept looking for that in those issues, and it never really came up.
It's Horridus presses the button, or
yeah, or the Deus Ex Machina shows up. It was planted issues before, so it's a good callback. We're fine with it. Part of the ongoing storyline. It's good. Because we never say anything bad about Freak Force. Remember that.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. Barbaric got pushed to the limits in 18, though. This poor guy got raked over the coals for 2 issues and had his chance to break Verlag in half, and instead just knocked him over the head and then passed out.
You know, I kind of thought it was cool, though, because Barbaric is always shown as like the lighthearted, goofy one. So to give him kind of like this role of, the broken kind of just almost ready to kill somebody is very unlike him. And so it hits hard that, this villain has kind of put him through a lot.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Just makes you love him all the more. Yeah, I mean, this series got nasty in the last few issues. I mean, people are just getting tortured left and right.
Oh, yeah. And then, the big reveal, not a big reveal, but you think that Jerry's kind of seen the way. Oh, Freak, Ricochet didn't mean to leave him behind. And, it honestly kind of fooled me. I thought it was all going to be wrapped up nicely. And then, he's like, kind of fooled them. I'm still going to kill Verlag.
Yeah. String the bastards up, he says.
Yeah.
Then he gives Chelsea, her, him, whatever the pronouns are at this point.
Yeah.
Your army, sir, as he says. So this is just crying for a sequel.
And Chelsea Nirvana's lost all of her curves.
Yeah. She's got
all of them.
That's a hell of a V-neck shirt to wear as a man.
I guess that's it for Freak Force for now.
Yeah. Oh, and I had 2 letters published in this issue.
2?
2. I guess I was too late for the previous issue. 16.
Yeah,
and
you missed
17.
the previous one.
Yeah, that's why. I am the ceremonial final letter.
Victor Bridges' art is still amazing. I really hope you can keep him for something, anything.
I'm consistent 30 years later. I still agree with me. Thank goodness.
I've had a few thoughts on how to bring Freak Force back a couple times in the past, but the opportunities come and go as the cast of Savage Dragon shifts and wanes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's difficult.
I thought a good time to revive Freak Force would have been back when Flash Mercury was Overlord and he was trying to reform the Vicious Circle. It would have been an interesting idea to have Overlord try to form a new Freak Force and have Dragon and Angel lead it as a and then you'd pull in a bunch of Vicious Circle goons to take the roles of all the Freak Force members Powerhouse and Mako and I think Low Blow was on my list to be the horridest of the group.
Yeah, that could be an entertaining series. You can if you have the right crazy characters, that could work.
Yeah, it was just an idea I had at the time, but then Low Blow died and then Overlord turned out to be a bad guy after all. And but like I said, it comes and it goes, and and the thing is, of course, now Freak Force has in a way come back because we do see the group, most of it still hanging out, and there's a new Dart and a Lightning Girl is the new Rapture, so there is effectively a Freak Force out there. We just need to put the spotlight on them.
Who do I have to pay?
Well, let's see what goes on with this new SOS plan that seems to be in the future, because I'm sure Malcolm will be recruiting, and we got all those kids who need to go into the grinder.
Yeah, we need them to have their own spin-off series. Not that this market would ever support such a thing, but we can always dream.
Was the backup in 115 supposed to be a one-shot? Did you ever hear anything about that, Augie, or know anything?
No, I mean, as far as I know, it was always just a one-off thing.
The way it kind of has to be.
I think Eric was just trying to point out that Freak Force wasn't going to happen. Augie, shut up.
Yeah.
I think this whole thing was him telling me to shut up.
I do find it odd that I feel like he's still keeping them around and keeping the same characters. We're on the 3rd version of Dart, which is the newest Dart is kind of a weird character.
Yeah.
She looks exactly like all the other versions. It's kind of strange.
Yeah. With no quirks to make her unique. Cause again, unlike Allison, we at least saw her for a long time and before she became a full on villain. Whereas this one is just a Dart, another one.
Yeah, yeah.
That could be her shtick.
Whereas at least Lightning Girl is her own character.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and they're still around to this day. Freak Force, they have the one character that is kind of interesting to me. Who's sometimes I get stuck on these characters that make one appearance, but that Chief Renfeather, who was in the Savage Dragon Salutes the Funnies issue, who's kind of at the he's at the reservation with Freak Force. He's kind of a funny character. I'd like to see him kind of do something with Freak Force.
I think it's time to start making some fan fiction here, folks. I tried with the original Freak Force once.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I had a moving day script. It was the story of Freak Force moving into their headquarters. It was 8 pages and it accomplished nothing.
Yeah.
So Eric's we're not using it.
Well, sometimes when you're submitting these stories to Eric, you can't make too much happen because he wants to be the guy that makes the stuff happen.
Yeah, I was just going for the gags at that point anyway.
Right.
As I recall, the story was every page was a single page gag of some sort. I have to find that script. I haven't looked at it in a long time.
I feel like
I don't even remember what it was.
The closest to another Freak Force comic we got was the Mighty Man one shot that Nikos did not recently. Now I say recently, it was probably 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, it was a backdoor Freak Force pilot.
It's so crazy when I think of that's recent to me, and you look and it's like, yeah, well, that was probably like 5 years ago, or things I look at and it was like, oh, that was 10 years ago. No way,
Once you hit 40, everything becomes 20 years ago.
Well, I think about like the Savage World, and that was only issue 100, and when that hit, it seemed like Savage Dragon had been around for so long.
Right.
But nope.
And it has been around for so long, and thank goodness for it.
Yes.
Without it, we wouldn't have this podcast.
Exactly. What would I do with myself?
The Invincible podcast, probably. And you'd make actual money.
Money's for suckers. Well.
And hey, there's a bone ad in the back of this issue, too.
Yeah, we haven't talked about the ads yet. But yeah, Bones coming to Image. What's that Extreme comic that was advertised as well? I forget its name.
Which one?
I think it was in the previous issue.
Let me see.
Oh, with like the different mercs, like
right.
Operation Night Strike.
Right,
that
was like the prequel.
Was that ever published?
Yeah, it probably was. That one of the ones that that Chuck Dixon wrote, or no? He was writing for Wildstorm. He was writing like their Team 7 books.
Night Strike.
It's like
Chapel
Operation
L.
Night
Simmons.
Strike. If you like the superheroes, I guess you'll enjoy them as non-powered commandos.
Lots of guns and explosions. I never, I'm looking at the letters column behind that. I never drew any Savage Dragon fan art. I should have done that. What was I thinking?
It's not too late.
Yeah, maybe not. Can I draw a Savage Dragon Smurf?
Yes.
I can draw
you
Smurfs.
Can. I don't know if it'll get published, but you can.
might be a copyright issue. I think
would
that's...
would it be blue or green?
I think it would be the first green Smurf, yeah. The tricky part is getting the fin to go over that white hat. Not sure how that works, but I'll work it out.
It's almost the same shape, so it could just kind of go over it,
Yeah, where the hat kind of flops over is where the fin rises up.
Yeah, you just make it pointy, like it's kind of pushing to the edges.
Yeah.
There
I like it. Okay, I'm going to work on that now. Wait till Eric listens to this. Oh, boy. Hopefully he's not busy inking an issue if he does listen to this, I'm not saying he will. He's busy inking an issue and he just the ink just fell right off the page. He's like, what the hell are they talking about now?
He's subliminally thinking he needs to add Freak Force to
yes,
the San Francisco contingent of SOS or Youngblood or whatever they're going to be called.
Can we do something subliminally to his computer to some Discord and foment Freak Force to happen?
We'll try.
Okay, we'll give that a shot on Facebook later. I think it's time, folks. It's time for Freak Force to come back.
We need a volume 3.
Yes.
I mean, do you think we'll ever get a collected edition of Freak Force?
Never say never. I would just like a digital version of Freak Force. I mean, it'd be good enough to just show up on whatever digital distributor we have left these days, Comixology or something. I assume once you have that, then you have the files you need for a print collection edition. I mean, our one hope is that, Todd McFarlane hires Vic Bridges to be the next Spawn artist.
There you go.
Everyone wants Vic Bridges art, and this is the best source for it.
I mean, it would be pretty cool to have like a Super Patriot Freak Force compendium and use like Dave Johnson's name to sell the thing.
Yeah, that would work. But that's only 6 issues?
You got 2 volumes of Dave Johnson, Super Patriot, and 2 volumes of Corey Walker, who's also pretty hot because of Invincible. So
not 2 volumes. The second one was done by the Jacket guy.
EJ Sue.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
With Corey Walker covers.
Same deal though. I mean, altogether it's what 6. I guess it's like 32. No wait, my math is bad. 34 issues. It's probably a bit more than a single compendium could do.
Yeah. Usually cut those off after 20 or 24, I think.
Yeah.
Well, they do omnibus of every size now.
Yeah. But I would say putting them all together would be the smartest way to do it.
Yeah, maybe. I'll take it whatever way they give it to me. I'll buy it. I'm there first in line.
Yep.
So,
I'll write the
Augie,
forward.
who else? Who else?
Who else would have the knowledge, the dedication, and the knowledge that this is the best book ever made by Image between the years 1993 and 1995 by an artist who left comics right afterwards? Just me.
Well, Augie,
sometimes you got to make your fortune. Yes.
Well, Augie, it's been great having you on. It was a long time coming, and we knew we wanted to get your personal opinion on this, and we got it. And
thank you.
And I'm glad we've gotten through all these issues because, like, again, for Raven and I, this was the first time we read these. Craig was revisiting them, and and so it was an interesting experience. I would say it was definitely worth it for sure. If you're a Savage Dragon fan, you owe it to yourself to make sure you read these Freak Force issues because you learn a few things that you didn't learn through the regular Savage Dragon series. There was an effort made to make these issues matter. Yeah.
And the good thing is, I think they sold pretty well back then. I mean, I know they ended at 18 because he said the sales are down, but you're talking 1995 numbers. So they're readily available.
Everything was on a downward swing right about then.
But there's plenty of them on eBay or on, back issue bins. So they're easy to find. And they do tie in a lot with what was going on in the early Savage Dragon issues. And they're just fun to look at. They're nice. Yeah. It's got a great letters page column. So there's a lot of nice, fun reading about kind of getting a feel about what was going on back then.
And the one other thing I can't let this go without mentioning is the coloring by Gloria Vasquez, who I don't know if she colored anything else in comics. I guess she did, but it's great in this book. It's super colorful. It's bright. I mean, the paper quality trailed off a little near the end. Like the first issues were a little glossier and it held the color a little bit better. Last issues got a little darker, but I love the way she colored everything, like super bright primary comic book colors, like pink and purple backgrounds in some cases and things. She wasn't going for, that look of the time. There was some modeling in there, but it looks great.
No, and I'm looking right now after you said that, I'm just kind of flipping through 18 and it looks good. I mean, like you said, back then there's that period where people just went crazy and this holds up.
Yeah, it's great. I love the coloring on this book. If nothing else, amongst everything else that's great about this book, let's go straight down the line of all the creators involved. They're all great. Even I hawk with their color separations. I assume they did a great job. I have no idea what that entailed. And Josh Eichhorn, of course, who was passed over for the New Monkeys.
That's right.
That was a thing, I guess, in 95. I'm sorry. There's just one more side.
That was probably a thing in 1968.
It's been ever thus. Monkeys: The Next Generation coming soon.
Well,
that's it.
Wrap it up, Jim.
We've said it all. So thanks for listening, everyone. This has been the Savage FINcast.
One thing before we jump off, I want to remind people for Augie was nice enough to jump on with us. I do want to kind of promote his website, Pipeline Comics. I know we said you talk a lot about European comics, but you also still touch on American comics. You did have a series where you talked about your Spider-Man issues that got you kind of hooked into comics. So
one day I'm going to go back and finish that too. I kind of trailed off there, but I got the first 15 or so issues done. We'll keep going eventually.
My favorite thing that you've ever done is when you did the Image crossover month write-up.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that was a good one. I like that one. Even I like that one, if I may say so myself.
That was great and fun, and I think you have the best write-up on it on the internet. Like, I've looked around, and I don't know if anyone's added stuff since, but I remember at the time, like, if you want to kind of read up on that, that's a great a blog post. But yeah, so just listeners out there, check out pipelinecomics.com and take a gander at that. It's fun stuff. And then the link to your podcast.
Still number one on Google for Image X month, by the way.
Cool.
Because I wrote that thing keeping in mind I wanted to cover every last possible inch of that topic. So anyone ever looks for that on Google, they're going to find me first, damn it.
Nice.
And they do. Thank you. Yeah. And the podcast is kind of, it's there. You can listen to the nearly 100 episodes I did. I'm not sure I'm going back to it right now, but it is there, and there's some good stuff. If you don't want to read all the reviews, I did audio versions of some of the reviews on there, so there's lots of good stuff to cover there too.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
All righty. You want to take it away, Jim?
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you.
Go home. You're drunk.